All right, thanks, guys. We're currently hitting at 67% for the entire college football season on patreon.com/BrockPage. We're also 8-2 in our last 10 board member plays on that website. If you want some more information about that site, link for that site is in the description section below. That is patreon.com/BrockPage. Now, we got ourselves an extensive slate of college football for Week 12, but we're actually just going to narrow it down to a couple of plays here. So let's go ahead and get into it, beginning with Michigan State taking on Michigan, and that's going to be a 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff at the Big House. The Wolverines are minus 13.5, totals at 44. We saw a 2.5-point move toward Michigan and movement downward on the total. The Wolverines opened 11 up to 13.5. Total opened 45 down to 44. 56% of the consensus are leaning toward Michigan. 72% shaded toward the over. Right now, Sparty is plus 470 on the money line. Sparty's also lost their last 4 straight games. They lost to Illinois last week, 37-34, where they were the 16-point favorite. Michigan State has failed to cover in 6 out of their last 7 games. They're also just 1-3 against the spread away from home. They rank 106th in scoring on average per game, 103rd in yards per play. A couple more things to add about Sparty. They're 72nd in defensive time of possession, 112th in rush yards allowed away from home. They're just 4-5 straight up on the year, 2-7 against the spread in those 9 games. They're also just 2-4 straight up in conference play. Now, Michigan on the other side, 5-1 against the spread in their last 6, 5-1 straight up in those 6 games. Their only loss in that span of matchups came to Penn State 28-21. They could have very well won that game. Michigan ranks in the top 15 in points allowed, top 5 in pass yards allowed, top 5 in yards per play allowed. They're also top 10 in rush yards allowed at home. They're undefeated at the Big House this year, 5-0 straight up at home. Uche, 7.5 sacks on the year, 2 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble. Hudson, 77 tackles, 1.5 sacks. Glasgow, 63 total tackles, 4 sacks for him. Metellus and Thomas have 2 interceptions apiece. Now, wide receiver Ronnie Bell is listed as questionable for the Wolverines, but on the Michigan State side, they have a whole slew of guys on this injury report. Arcuri, Brown, Buter, Hayes, Nelson, Panashik, Gillison, all listed as questionable for the Spartans. Now, total-wise, Michigan State is 3-1 to the under in their last 4. They're also 5-4 to the under overall for the season. I'm going to purchase the 0.5 point, slide it down, and take the Michigan Wolverines minus 13 and the under 44 in that game. Next matchup, University of Florida taking on Mizzou. 12 o'clock Eastern kickoff at Missouri. Florida's minus 6.5, totals 50 and a hook. Pretty good two-way action on this spread. Not a whole lot of movement there. We did see a 2.5-point move upward on this total. Once again, Florida open and remains minus 6.5. Total open 48 up to 50 and a hook. 70% of the consensus are leaning toward Florida. 55% shaded toward the under. Right now, Missouri is plus 235 on the money line. The Tigers just 4-5 against the spread overall for the year. They also failed to cover in their last 4 straight. They rank 72nd in scoring on average per game, 79th in yards per play. Bryant, Johnson, and Roundtree listed as questionable for the Tigers. The Tigers lost their last 3 straight games. They're 66th in home passing. Now, the Gators on the other side, they rank in the top 10 in points allowed, top 25 in pass and rush yards allowed per game. Grenard has 4 sacks on the year. He also has 38 tackles, 1 interception, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovery. Carter and Diabate, 3.5 sacks each. Steiner with 4 interceptions. Davis with 3 picks himself. And offensively, Pitts and Swain have 5 receiving touchdowns apiece. The Gators are 8-2 straight up overall for the year, 7-3 against the number. Total wise, UF is 3-1 to the over in their last 4. I'm going to purchase the half a point, buy it down, and take the Gators -6 and the over 50.5 in that game. Next matchup, it is going to be Navy taking on Notre Dame, and that's going to be a 2:30 Eastern kickoff at Notre Dame. The Fighting Irish are -6.5 total at 54. We saw a 2.5 point fade of Notre Dame and movement downward on the total. The Fighting Irish opened 9, down to -6.5. Total opened 55, down to 54. 51% of the consensus are leaning toward the midshipmen of Navy. 63% shaded toward the over. Right now, Navy's plus 255 on the money line. They also rank 50th in passing yards allowed on the road. They have a very sad strength of schedule. They beat the likes of UConn, USF, Tulsa, and Holy Cross. They also failed to cover against Tulane, and they lost to Memphis 35-23, where they failed to cover an 11-point spread. They were plus 11. Navy's just 1-7 straight up in their last 8 head-to-head matchups with the Fighting Irish, if you're into historical trends. They're also 0-5 straight up in their last 5, taking on an FBS independent. Now, the Fighting Irish on the other side, winners in 5 out of their last 6. They're 7-2 straight up overall for the year, top 25 in points allowed, top 7 in yards per play allowed. Owusu, Koromoa, and Jones have 4 sacks apiece. Hamilton, 3 interceptions for him. Kareem, 4.5 sacks. Bilal, 56 total tackles. Now, total-wise, Notre Dame 2-2 to the over at home. Navy's 5-1 to the over in their last 6. 3-0 to the over away from home. I'm going to purchase the half a point, slide it down, and take Notre Dame -6 and the over 54 in that game. Before we go ahead and move on, just want to take another quick timeout and welcome you to the show. Got some lines and personal leans out for college football week 12. We're at week 12 already. But before we get into some more of that, I just want to quickly remind you to check me out once again on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage, where we are currently hitting at 67% for the entire college football season. We're also 8-2 in our last 10 board member package plays. We do premium plays and selections on that website, beginning at just $1.99 per month. We have a bunch of different memberships, tiers, and packages that you can subscribe to. Now, a lot of folks will ask me what's the difference between Patreon and right here on YouTube, and what I tell them is what we do on Patreon is we typically handicap the entire slate, all the games that are on the board, both side and total. Now, if you did that in real life and you bet your hard-earned money on every single game, you're destined to lose. The math is against you. The books are too good. You just cannot win betting every single game, side and total. So what we do on Patreon is we really focus and dial it in on 3 to 4 premium selections per day. They're my personal selections, games that I personally have action on. And I'll tell you this much, our current win percentage and record on Patreon's a lot better than it is on YouTube, handicapping every game. So if you want to check out that record right now, you can do it for free. All you got to do is click the link in the description section below. That is patreon.com/BrockPage. All right, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some more lines and personal leans. All starts Eastern Standard Time. And on deck, we've got Georgia taking on Auburn, 3:30 Eastern kickoff in that game. The Bulldogs of Georgia are -3 away from home. Totals at 40.5. We saw a half a point fade of UGA and movement downward on the total. The Bulldogs open 3.5 down to -3. Total open 42.5 down to 40 and a hook. 60% are leaning Georgia. 52% shaded toward the under. Right now, Auburn's plus $1.25 on the money line. Auburn's also failed to cover in 2 out of their last 4. They're 2-2 straight up in those 4 games as well. They lost to LSU and the University of Florida. Keep in mind, Georgia beat Florida not too long ago. And it was a one-score game, but late score by Florida. So really a convincing victory, in my opinion, by Georgia in that game. Now, Auburn has a slew of guys on the injury report. More specifically, we have Brown, Davidson, Dinson, Whitlow, and Johnson all listed as questionable for the Tigers. Auburn ranks 91st in passing, 69th in yards per play. They're also 59th in pass yards allowed and 63rd in defensive time of possession. Now, you'd think Auburn would have a home field advantage, but they're 63rd in home passing and 52nd in yards per play at home. They're just 3-7 straight up in their last 10 head-to-head matchups with Georgia, and they failed to cover in 7 out of those 10 games. Now, the Bulldogs on the other side, they rank in the top 5 in offensive time of possession, top 25 in yards per play. They're 8-1 straight up overall for the year, 5-1 in conference play. Jake Fromm is completing 67% of his passes. He's almost thrown for 1,900 yards, just shy of 1,900 yards. He's got 13 touchdown passes, 3 interceptions. Philly's own DeAndre Swift, 921 yards on the year, 6.3 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns on the ground. Harrion, 5.2 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns for the Bulldogs. And Cager and Pickens, 4 touchdown catches apiece. Cager has been upgraded to probable for this Saturday's action. Looks like he's going to be in the game. Now, the Bulldogs, on the other side of the ball, they rank in the top 3 in points allowed, top 10 in defensive time of possession. They're also in the top 10 in yards allowed per play. Ojulari, 4.5 sacks. Rice, 56 tackles. LeCount, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery. And when it comes to this total, Auburn is 4-3 to the over in their last 7. 67% to the over at home. I'm going to lean toward the favorite in this matchup here. Give me Georgia -3 and the over 40.5 in that game. Next matchup, Big Ten Showdown. It's going to be Minnesota taking on the Hawkeyes. 4 o'clock Eastern kickoff at Kinnick Stadium in Iowa. The Hawkeyes are -3 at home over the undefeated Gophers. Total's at 44. We saw a half a point move toward Iowa. We also saw movement downward on the total. The Hawkeyes open 2.5 up to -3. Total open 44.5 down to 44. 68% are leaning Minnesota. 72% shaded toward the over. Right now, the Golden Gophers are plus 135 on the money line. The Golden Gophers are also undefeated. 9-0 straight up on the year. Nice marquee win over Penn State last week. And although it was a one-score game, convincing victory in my opinion. Minnesota 7-2 against the spread in those 9 games. 6-0 ATS in their last 6. Nice little winning streak for Minnesota backers with regard to the betting lines. They're also 4-0 against the spread when traveling this year. Minnesota ranks in the top 15 in road scoring, top 20 in road passing, top 10 in offensive time of possession, and they're in the top 25 in offensive yards per play on the road. Sophomore quarterback Tanner Morgan, he's completing 68% of his passes, 2,100 yards on the year, 21 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Senior running back Rodney Smith, 940 yards on the ground, 7 touchdowns for him. Muhammad Ibrahim, 4.7 yards per carry, 6 touchdowns for Mo. And the sophomore wide receiver Rashad Bateman, 847 yards receiving, 7 touchdown catches, 22 yards per reception he's averaging. Meanwhile, on the other side of the field, Tyler Johnson has 730 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns for him. Now, Minnesota ranks in the top 20 in pass yards allowed. They're also top 10 in defensive time of possession, top 10 in yards per play allowed on the road. Antoine Winfield, what can I say? This guy is awesome. Winfield has 54 tackles, 2 sacks, 7 interceptions, and a pick 6. Coughlin has 4.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. Martin, 46 tackles, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. This Minnesota team looks like a complete squad. Now, Iowa on the other side, winners in just 2 out of their last 5. They've also failed to cover in 4 out of their last 7. They're 97th in scoring, 95th in rushing. Banwart, Jackson, Wading, Schott, Merriweather, and Goodson all listed as questionable for this Saturday's action. The Hawkeyes are just 2-3 against the spread at Kinnick Stadium this year. They're ranked 77th in home scoring. Meanwhile, when it comes to this total, Minnesota's 3-0 to the over in their last trio of ball games, 6-2 to the over in their last 8. They're also 4-0 to the over when traveling. I'm going to lean toward the road dog in this one. Give me Minnesota +3 and the over 44 in that game. And I'm going to slide to my next and final matchup for the show. It is going to be Oklahoma taking on Baylor. 7:30 Eastern kickoff in that game. Oklahoma's -10 on the road. Total 67.5. 55% are leaning Baylor. 67% shaded toward the over. Right now the Bears are +315 on the money line. They're one of the few undefeated teams left in the country. That's right, Baylor's 9-0 straight up on the year, 4-2 against the spread in their last 6. They rank 27th in scoring, 16th in yards per play. The Sooners on the other side failed to cover in 4 out of their last 5. They're 51st in yards per play allowed, 102nd in defensive time of possession. When it comes to this total, Baylor's 4-3 to the under in their last 7. Oklahoma 60% to the under away from home. I'm going to lean toward the undefeated dog. Give me Baylor +10 and the under 67.5 in that game. And we're going to slide into our next quick pick recap brought to you by patreon.com/BrockPage, where we are hitting at 67% for the entire college football season on that website. I like Baylor +10, under 67.5. Minnesota +3, over 44. Georgia -3, over 40.5. Notre Dame -6, over 54. Florida -6, over 50.5. And last but certainly not least, I like the Michigan Wolverines -13 and the under 44 in that game. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Once again, don't forget to check me out on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage, where we are hitting at 67% for the entire college football season. We're also 8-2 in our last 10 board member package plays. We do premium selections on that website beginning at just $1.99 per month. Now, a lot of folks will ask me, what's the difference between this YouTube channel and your Patreon page? The difference is this. What we do on YouTube is we handicap every single game on the board, both side and total. We formulate an opinion. Really, it's a content-based thing. You know, we handicap every single game. We don't take free passes. We formulate an opinion on sides and totals, as many of them as we can. We do not do that on Patreon. What we do is we dial it in and focus on 3 to 4 premium selections per day. Those are high percentage selections, and they're my personal selections. They're my personal plays. They're games that I personally have action on. And I'll tell you this much. My record on Patreon is a lot better than it is on YouTube. It's just the way it is. Just me being honest with you. So, if you want to check out my record right now, you can do that for free. You can do it right now. All you got to do is click the link in the description section below. That is patreon.com/BrockPage. But most importantly, guys, I do got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. Happy Wednesday to you. Best of luck to you. And don't forget to check me out on patreon.com/BrockPage.